I was floored by it. Like I said, never thought this would happen.
My initial reaction was, utter surprise. Just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just because, after 50 years of living under the Roe v. Wade decision, it's almost impossible to imagine a modern day Supreme Court, going back and revisiting that case and saying, you know what, actually it was wrong. And I'm sure we're going to get into the merits of the case, very soon. So yeah, I was shocked.
Jim, how about you? Where were you? Were you drinking tea and then the cup dropped from your hands and shattered on the ground?
That's a wonderful visual. No, I was actually watching. My wife and I were streaming something on TV, something on Netflix or something. I think it was the Great Pottery Throwdown. It's another a new stupid show that we're watching that I really enjoy for some strange reason. And my phone I could see that my phone I was getting texts and it was from you guys about what happened. And so finally, after one of the episodes, I picked it up and went, oh my God, the left is going to take the L for the first time in a long time on this one. And I started to have, kind of good feelings, similar to when Hillary lost and Trump won in 2016. There was just this gobsmacked amazement. I can't believe it. The left is going to lose one here. Look, the left's march, as we talk about a lot on this podcast, through the institutions and through our society is like relentless. And almost all of their policy victories are achieved through the courts. And they always seem permanent. When was the last time, maybe listeners would search their own brains for this as well, but when was the last time the left earned a policy victory through persuasion or through elections and not through the courts? And then 2, when was the last time a court said after a leftist victory in the courts that, you know what, maybe this victory shouldn't be permanent. Maybe taking issues out of the hands of the people forever is not a really good way to make policy. And maybe it even causes some of this heightened political and social strife we see in this country. And then there's a bit of language of that in the Alito draft, so that maybe, in this case, that the people should have more say on these matters and not courts. The left thoroughly believes that all of their court victories are permanent and for all time. Roe is decided law for all time. Everybody who testifies in the Senate to be on the Supreme Court has to promise that Roe v. Wade is the one Supreme Court decision that can never, ever, ever be overturned. But at the same time, a decision like Citizens United, which allows, an individual citizen to make a film, criticizing Hillary Clinton and then releasing that film right before the election when it would have the most impact. Any victories for the Constitution or for the right, those all have to go. But every victory on the left has to stay for all time. That's one of the most shocking things about this, is that this is the number one policy victory by the left that the Supreme Court, frankly, has ever decided, and it was almost 50 years ago, and it's now on the cusp of being thrown out. And I have some thoughts on that too. I'm not quite sure that's actually going to happen, but the left going absolutely berserk, going crazy about this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not such a great person, but it gave me a bit of a warm feeling inside.
The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next 2 months. So that was paragraph 4 of this. So it was paragraph 4 of this where I was like, okay, wait. So this is not the final decision. So, no. I mean, Jim, theoretically, the final decision could go in the complete other direction.
Well, I don't know if it'll go in the complete other direction, but the thing that struck me upon reading the decision, reading the excerpts of it, I didn't read it from front to back, and I probably will eventually get to do that. But anybody who reads this draft sees nothing in common with the majority of decisions produced by this Roberts Court. The Roberts Court punts these big decisions so often they should be trying out for an NFL team. I mean, they just never actually, they so rarely ever decide strictly on the constitutional basis. On page 5, I'm going to run through a little bit of these excerpts that I put down in my notes here. On page 5, this Alito draft says, quote, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the due process clause of the 14th Amendment." Alito quoted in this decision a dissent of Roe from back 49 years ago by Justice White. That dissent agreed that the decision was, quote, "an exercise of raw judicial power." Alito also wrote that, quote, "Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak. And Roe was a decision that, quote, has had damaging consequences." And then on page 15, at the top of that page, Alito writes, quote, Until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. Zero. None. Unquote. That is really, really remarkable to see in a Supreme Court decision, even in a draft. One more quick quote. I know this is good for the audio listeners for sure. Page 24, quote, "The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions." Now, again, these are all direct quotes from Alito's draft. And the Roberts Court simply does not hand down majority opinions that have wording like that. They just haven't. In a concurrence, like say written by Clarence Thomas, or a dissent written by Alito, or back in Justice Scalia's time, yes, lots of really biting language, because it's not going to be, it's not considered language that is establishing constitutional law. These are more opinions. So for Alito to have written this, I challenge anyone, show me another decision by the Roberts Court that has anything like this in a majority opinion. They just don't exist. And the example of this, again, how they always are punting these big, it seems like they're always punting these big constitutional questions, is the Masterpiece Cake case, where in Colorado, where a Christian baker refused to participate in a same-sex wedding by baking providing them their wedding cake. And it finally got all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled on it very narrowly. And basically, it just applied to him, and they upbraided the Colorado Human Rights Commission for some of the language it used in the decision that it made. It was extremely narrow. They did not take the opportunity there to say that a person, an individual in a free country with the constitutional protections of the First Amendment, which is protecting our right to free speech, our right to free assembly, our right of religion, has a right as an individual to refuse to participate in something that he believes is against his deeply held religious convictions. The court could have said that. It was a very good case to say that in the Masterpiece Cake case, and they refused to do it. So I put that in the back of my mind as I was reading through this decision, and it makes me think that this was a draft. This was written again in February by Alito, right? And so they usually kick that around, and other justices will have some input on actually the final language of the main decision. So this might be Alito's personal views. He probably expects a lot of that, or expected a lot of that, to be watered down a little bit by his fellow justices in the majority vote, if they stay in the majority vote. So, I was on a call, a secret call with other leading right organizations. Yeah, I won't reveal who it was. Yes, the conservative Illuminati. I'm part of that. I am part of that. Yes. I was on a call with them the other day, and they were elated. They were excited. Like, this is it. Roe's gone, and it's gone for good. It's all gone. Casey's gone. This is unbelievable. They're going to put it all back to the states, and we could do what we want. Now, what do we do? About halfway through the call, I raised my hand and I said, I'm a cynic by nature, so I just want to get your feeling. Like, this is just a draft, you realize, written by Alito, one of the most conservative justices on the court, written back in February. Not even, so that was 2 months ago. Do you guys have any inkling that like a lot of that language is not going to be in the final decision, that this could be watered down, that the Roberts Court could actually return to form and make a really mealy-mouthed, squishy decision that really doesn't throw Roe all the way out like you guys think is going to happen? I had a hard time, to be honest, getting people to think that I might have been right on that. I hope I'm wrong. I'm telling you, I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think I am. I think it's probably more likely than not that, Roe v. Wade is not thrown out entirely, that there'll be some kind of compromise decision that may even muddle this issue even more than it has been, if that's possible.
So on Twitter, after this news broke, people immediately started playing detective. Who could have leaked this draft? Why was it leaked? Was the intention of it leaking so that we can change the final outcome? All of these questions were being bandied about with a bunch of different, answers to those, proposed answers to those questions. So, Chris, how important are these questions? And do you have any thoughts on them?
I think they're very important. I think a chilling effect has been created because, once again, this has never happened in Supreme Court history. And now you have a precedent set where if one of the clerks or someone, associated on the inside of the court thinks, oh, I don't like this opinion. I don't like where this is going. Therefore, I'm going to, put it out to the public, early so that we can try to intimidate the justices to change their vote. And what do you know? A couple of days later, the 6 justices that make up the conservative wing of the Supreme Court are now under danger, and their homes are being protested. And this is not the way it's supposed to be. The Supreme Court was supposed to be an independent institution, free from all of this kind of like rancor. But here we are, 2022, when one side just doesn't get their way. And as I've said many times in this podcast, the ends justify the means. So if they have to burn down the institution of the Supreme Court in the process, so be it.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people on our side of the aisle, they think, very much what you just said, that this is some clerk of some liberal Supreme Court justice that leaked this in the effort to, stir up so much anger and outrage in the public and in the media to, pressure the conservative justice to maybe change their mind. But I have this article, and I have it in the show notes. This is a New York Times article that is titled, "What was the strategy behind the Supreme Court leak?" And in this article, the author paints a different scenario. Says if you were simply following a crude strategic logic, the fact that what's been leaked is a draft from months ago might suggest that the leaker is on the conservative side, hopes to freeze a wavering justice, Kavanaugh being an obvious candidate, into their initial vote by making it seem like their very credibility of the court rests on their not being perceived to cave under external pressure. What do you guys say to that? Jim, you're kind of shaking your head already.
No, I doubt that very much. I really doubt that. Look, I agree with Chris here, though, that this is, it's rare that there's any kind of insight, sources giving up even insight on what the deliberation process is like. The Supreme Court to this day does not allow cameras in the court. There are only audio recordings that people can listen to. They refuse to put cameras in there. They're very traditional. Ideologically different justices are often very, very close friends. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, famously with Antonin Scalia, probably absolutely on the other ends of the political spectrum, were very, very close friends and had great affection for each other. This kind of stuff just is not done. I mean, once in a while, it may leak what the vote might be, or they might be leaking some unofficial information about how people might be leaning. I mean, that's happened on occasion. It happens like once every 10 or 15 years, though. It is absolutely unprecedented that a draft opinion by one of the justices is publicly given to a reporter. That just doesn't happen. And you got to understand also that these clerks, if you are fortunate enough to clerk for a Supreme Court justice, you are set for life. You'll have your choice of white shoe law firms who will give you a, $250,000, $300,000 signing bonus just to join their law firm. They'll put you on the fast track to partner. So you're, and then from there, probably you'll be appointed a judge, a federal judge somewhere along the line. I mean, your life is set. So with the theory that this is a clerk who was clerking for one of the more liberal justices on the court, to basically blow up that entire career track because they are so upset about what Alito wrote, I think that's the much more likely scenario. But what this is it completely destroys. This person has just completely blown up, frankly, to a lot of people's minds, the credibility of the Supreme Court. Right now, the conservative justices, there was talk by Tuesday morning, actually even by Monday night, that what the court has to do immediately to retain its credibility is to just release Alito's draft as law the next day. Right. Because failing to do so leaves open the idea that this court is going to now be adjusting its opinion on this very, very important matter based on, well, how many people are going to be riding in the streets of this summer? How many people are rallied out in front of the Supreme Court building that night? Suddenly, as one of our commenters pointed out, there were professionally printed up signs outside the Supreme Court within an hour. Funny how that works out. But, they can't. So the idea that I understand the idea that a conservative clerk leaked this to make sure the conservatives don't waver. But I think ultimately what it probably will do, again, if they haven't already started, this draft was written in February. It makes logical sense that these justices have already had other conversations about adjusting the language of that draft before it is finalized and brought down as the decision of the Supreme Court. So now it's almost to the point where no matter what they do, even if the conservative justices keep their votes where they are and it's a 5-4, with Roberts taking not joining the majority on this one, because he rarely does, it seems, even though he's a conservative. But if it comes out that the language has been modified or watered down, it's still going to be in the people's mind that was only done. It was only watered down. That Alito's initial draft was not released as the opinion because of the public pressure. And it is the Supreme Court is the one branch of our government system that is supposed to be, frankly, impervious to public input. They're supposed to decide these things on the constitutionality of statute, and that's it. And it's going to be hard to convince most people in this country that this decision was not affected by public outcry. And that's a shame, because that really undermines the rule of law all across the country, and at a time when we already have so little faith in our institutions as it is.
Hey, Andy, pull up that question again. This is Mark Gooden, says, can the reporter, as well as Politico, be held legally accountable for knowingly accepting the draft and then publishing it? Jim?
I mean, I'm a former reporter. I think no. If you're not going to put in jail the reporters who published the Pentagon Papers, you're not going to put these people in jail either. I mean, the person who leaked it could be in big trouble. In fact, people were attorneys and attorneys that I read online that have had a case before and have stood in the Supreme Court and argued a case are just outraged. And some of their one opinion was like Justice Roberts the next day should have gathered all the clerks into a room and said, you have 30 seconds to identify who leaked this, or else you're all fired. And then, sorry, we'll just make do for the rest of the term without any clerks at all. I guess the justices will actually have to write their own opinions and do their own research for a couple of months, but you're all fired. And that would have been a way to restore credibility here. But obviously that didn't happen. It's not going to happen. But there has to be some sort of consequences for this sort of thing. This can't be the regular order of business going forward on the Supreme Court. And again, I think it's much more likely than not that a leftist clerk did this. Again, our precious norms, our precious political norms are just completely blown up anytime the left feels like it, because they want to get their way. Donald Trump tweets something mean to a reporter and it's an attack on the Constitution itself. A Supreme Court clerk releases a draft opinion in order to outrage half the country. And that's just, that's fair play, I guess. The left have their own rules, and they never seem to apply evenly to anybody else.